Hello again everyone, how are we? I hope you're enjoying this series. Today I'm going to take the next step with our painted piece of fabric and build what will become the last layer of background material. So today might be a little bit uncomfortable for some people, and I understand that completely, but like with the paint, take the ideas and the concepts and the techniques and apply them in your own projects in your own way. So what we're going to work on today, the three areas of focus for today, is going to be adding some paper, some photo transfers and some foils. So the paper that I'm using is a commercial tissue paper. It's made by Prima Marketing. The scrapbooking, paper crafting places will sell it. We obviously have it on our website. We have a huge range of tissue papers. Other papers you can use though include things like napkins. Many of you will have seen the napkins added to bags and other projects, especially the 3-layer ones. You can get some really good quality, beautiful prints, and you peel off the 3 layers and just use the top layer. You can use things like old music sheets. Dress patterns are fantastic. So for those of you that have got a pile of those that you've used in the past, you can apply those sorts of paper. But don't be limited to very lightweight paper. For example, in this quilt here, this is one that was in Quilting Arts TV and Quilting Arts magazine, I used really heavyweight, high quality gift wrapping paper. I wanted the Japanese theme that I was putting with this quilt, so that was the only paper I could find. I wasn't sure if it was going to work, and it worked perfectly. So this still has a lot of movement. I can still iron it and scrunch it, and it's not really stiff, but you can use all sorts of things. There's a whole world of techniques using paper. I'm just going to touch on the first of them, and maybe we'll do some more in future sessions with some more paper. So this was the original one that I did as a class sample for teaching adding paper to a quilt, and we've used a lot of music printed tissue paper in the background there. If you've got old hymn books, I think I said that, hymn books, music sheets, all of that sort of stuff, they're a really good source for really interesting paper. Recently I've started using corporations law. Because the legislation is printed on very super light paper, you can rip that up, and I have corporations law, if you don't know, it's about this big, and I have one from about 1992, so it's all been outdated and rewritten since then. Fabulous texture. One of the reasons I like using things like that is it gives you lots of linear elements to the piece, so you get lots of lines. Similarly here, you've got lines coming through that change the way the eye carries across the piece, so putting some of the paper elements in can really add a lot of interest to the piece. The second product we're going to use is the transfer artist paper. Now, transfer artist paper is one of my all-time favourite products. Leslie Riley, who formulated it and has done a lot of work around promoting it, has written several books on it, has become a very good friend over the years with our shared use of her product. And then for several years, many years, it was completely out of stock, and that was just devastating. But they have reformulated it and it's now back, and that is very exciting. So I've got some images that I'm going to show you at a later stage where I have printed them on, well, later stage in this series, I've printed them on all sorts of different fabric. So the exact same image printed on different fabrics to show you the difference in the process and technique that you get. And then we're going to add some more bees that I've printed onto the transfer artist paper onto our fabric to complement the bee that we used with the screen print yesterday. And then the third thing that I want to look at today is metallic foils. Now again, stolen I guess from the papercraft stamping industry, though they had borrowed it originally from packaging. When you walk down the shelves, the aisles in the supermarket, and see on the shelves the shiny bright packaging on the toothpaste and the laundry powder and all those sorts of things. That's these metallic foils. Now, I'm going to talk a bit more about them specifically once we get started, but they're a lot of fun to add, and there's some interesting, slightly innovative ways that I'm going to show you to put foils on. This layer is what I would classify as my bling layer. So you only need lots of little bits, you don't need a huge amount of anything to make this effective, but it can really highlight, tie up your theme, carry your theme through, and just add just those little bits of interest that will make the quilt a bit more depth and a bit more interesting and quite stunning. So that's what we're going to do today, and I hope you're going to enjoy that. This next segment of building our layers of quilt is going to start with incorporating paper into the quilt. Now, a lot of people will find the concept of putting paper into a quilt a little daunting, and that's okay. You don't have to do it, but it creates some interesting elements that can be acquired in no other way. So in the case of this example that I've laid out, I'm using a commercial tissue paper produced by Prima, one of the scrapbooking companies. The paper's great because it's got lots of interesting elements attached to it. It's designed for collage. Wasn't necessarily designed for collage on fabric, but if there's a rule, I'm bound to be the one who wants to try to break it. I've cut out the face of my lady here, and I've torn some random bits. Now what we're doing here is effectively just adding another layer of texture, elements, design, and you can see by the colours that it's going to coordinate really well with the background that we created yesterday. So we're just building up more and more layers, and I'm going to talk more about transparency tomorrow. But one of the best parts about having a really detailed background is that when you put something down that's semi-transparent, everything that's behind it comes through, and you get the benefits of all the elements in combination. Let's dive in and have a go. So, using my usual brush and bowls, just showing you really don't need to spend a lot of money on your tools. Now, this is gel medium. Like the textile medium that I talked about in the first session, gel mediums are really common and easy to find now. Chromacryl's an Australian company, so I like to use theirs if I can find them. It can be a bit more challenging when I'm teaching overseas, so I tend to use Golden or some of the other ones when I'm overseas. It will always say gel medium. It doesn't always say impasto. It can be light gel medium. It doesn't really matter, as long as it's got gel medium in the title. It comes in a gloss, a semi-gloss and a matte. I tend to use the matte because I don't want to bring shiny elements to my work. But there are times when you might want to actually have a shiny finish, so the gloss might suit you better. This is just your basic medium that was originally designed by the folk art industry and the acrylic paint industry to create the effect of oil painting with acrylic paint. So you can mix, what it was designed for is you could mix paint into the gel, and you can see how much body that has. Mix the paint into the gel, and then the gel can be put onto a canvas or whatever you're painting like an oil, and it would hold the form of an oil type painting but have all the advantages of acrylic paint. So fast, not nasty smells, fast drying, quite easy to wash up at the end of the painting session, etc. So naturally, of course, products like these have existed, and I see them as an opportunity to create collage because they're such a good strong glue. They will collage anything. I have literally hung a horseshoe on a piece of fabric with gel medium. So they will take a lot. They dry clear, and they, as I said, will hold pretty much anything. And there's no real fragrance. There's no strong odour or anything like that. Now, I don't want to use it quite like that. I need it a little bit diluted because I don't want it to be as fully solid as that. Most mediums I dilute in some way with some water. They're all water soluble. So I'm just going to mix my gel medium up into my water just so it's not as gluggy and thick, because I don't want it to be able to suspend a horseshoe for this piece. If I was using really heavy metals and things like that, I would use it straight out of the jar. But for a lightweight quilt effect, you just need a little bit of water. Now, I'm going to do two things. Firstly, I'm going to wet down everywhere that I think I'm going to put the paper. And just a little bit more. So then when I press my paper down, we've largely got her grabbed onto the fabric. And that will adhere, and she's not going to go anywhere. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the top, and this does three things. Firstly, it makes sure that there's glue everywhere we want the glue to be. So right up to the edges. The other thing it does is removes any air bubbles. So I know that by running over the top, I've adhered her and I've removed the air bubbles, and she's pretty stable. And then the third thing that's achieved through that process, I'm giving it a degree of water resistant. It won't be completely waterproof, but it will be water resistant. So I can wipe it down, it can have a light wash if I need to. I can put paint or other wet surfaces wet substances over the top, and I know that it's going to be relatively stable and safe. So I'm just going to work my way through and put all of these bits of paper randomly over my piece, and it's just adding to the textural background that we've created. And when it's dry, I'll be able to stitch through this. I'll be able to add more layers. I can put more paint on the surface if I want to. Bits rip off, doesn't matter. Just put them somewhere else. It all adds to the texture of the overall piece. So, once this dries, we'll come back and do a bit more to it. So I'll see you shortly. The next thing I want to show you is the transfer artist paper. Now, as I said before, transfer artist paper was missing for years, and I was very sad about it. But it has come back, and it's a slightly new, improved formula. It has a smoother surface, and it has dots on the back, so you know that the new tap, the old one used to have a light lilac background. You print onto the right side, so not the side with the dots. And you can pretty much print everything on it. Depends on what sort of thing you want to do. I like it, as I said, for a lot of image transfer, but I've used it for labels. When I make a quilt, if I iron the labels straight onto the backing, there's no way unpicking it to get the label off will make any difference, because it's ironed into the backing. And if someone were to try and take that off, then if someone stole the quilt, they could put a new backing on there, but they would never be able to take my quilt label off because it's a permanent thing. Anyway, many uses for it. I've done it for family quilts. I did a quilt for my dad with the grandkids. His mum So we had 4 generations of photos all on the one quilt. You can use it for signature quilts, you can use it in art pieces, the sky's the limit. When you first put the tap on the surface, you will feel a bit of stiffness. That softens up with handling. So by the time you finish quilting everything, by the time you have washed the item once or twice, it will have softened right up. I don't find it an issue with stiffness, but you will notice that it's there. Now what I've done with my theme here today is I've printed out a handful of bees. I got the license for the bee image from Adobe, and I'm going to use these in a few different things in the next little while because I'm on a bit of a bee theme. So I've cut out roughly around the edges. If you're working on something very dark or quite shiny, some of that white will show through. Mostly you don't notice it, but you will transfer polymer on the edge there. So just be aware of that, and the last thing you want to be doing is spending hours cutting out every single little bit of white, but try and get as close as possible as you can. Now the old tap you had to transfer very hot. I'm just going to peel this one off. I ironed this a while ago to show you that you can peel it cold as well. We used to have to really rush with our just that little corner didn't go down quite as well. Used to have to really rush while it was really still toasty hot and run the risk of burning your fingers while you removed the backing. What you effectively have here is a background, polymer, the white, and then the ink from the inkjet printer. So when I reverse this and I iron that down like so, I've then got polymer that sits and traps my my ink onto my fabric. So the polymer sits over the top of any ink. Now you can use coloured pencils, you can use crayons, you can use texture, markers, you can use all sorts of things to transfer your design. Now you can see there that I'm ironing with no trouble over the image. Best idea, if you're not sure if you've got it hot enough, is just to lift the corner and see, but it's pretty hard to not be able to transfer. Now I'm just going to do that one a bit longer because I didn't get enough. You can see I need to clean my iron. Anyway, so you can make layers. If I wanted to put an image over the top of my bees, I could do that, and you can also add other colours as you go. So with that, you can see that I haven't really ironed it enough. That was the first one, and that was the second. So I should have kept ironing that a bit longer, but I've got quite a good image there. Tap's another thing. I could spend quite a lot of time with you running through lots of different exercises, lots of things we can do, and perhaps that'll be something for the future. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in seeing more into the future on different processes of using the transfer artist paper or tap. Now you might have noticed, I should have said up front, I'm still waiting for the paper element to dry. It's quite cold here today, so we don't have the heat in the air, and I just want this to dry naturally, so I'm going to work on this for the example. I'll fix up the quilt top that we're working on with the bees and the foils, which I'm about to show you, and I'll show you the finished product first thing tomorrow. So that's the transfer artist paper. Lots and lots of options available on how to use it. Really opens up the photo transfer world to you and gives you really amazingly precise images. Let's have a closer look at these images on the different fabrics. So this is the transfer artist paper where I've used exactly the same photo on different fabrics just to show you the effects. So this one is on a white homespun. Clean, crisp, smooth, a lot of detail, very easy to see what's going on there. Quite a beautiful little photo. Exact same photo on a patterned background. you can see, if I come in a bit closer, that all the background comes through. The tap is a transparent process, so you get whatever you put it on coming through and showing through, which can be fabulous. Another example of showing what happens with the transparency. Now this is on a green piece of cotton fabric, and because the fabric is green, the influence of green comes through all the details of the photo. You can see that there. This is on a heavyweight luchador. Again, because it's got the white background, you get that crispness of image, but you also, if I can focus in there a little bit, you can see the texture of the luchador coming through. Similarly, this one is on our bamboo rayon felt, so quite a smooth surface, white background, but a degree of texture coming through into the image as well. And this one here is on a very sheer silk georgette. You can see right through that, but you get a very light, soft finish. I really like using image transfer onto the shears because you get amazing effects. Two quite different ones again. This is a coloured lightweight luchador, so you have the gold shining through and you get the gold influencing the colour, but you also get the texture, as you can see there. And then this final example was on a product which has now been discontinued, but it was Luchador Crash. I think it was called Crash, but I always thought it should be Crush. And you can see that when you put the image onto a textured surface, so not smooth, wherever the image comes in contact, it transfers. But where it does not, you get gaps in the patterning. Now, as long as you know that's what's going to happen, it's a great thing, but you don't want to find this out by surprise. So I love putting these images onto lace, for example, because you can get some really amazing, stunning effects. But that just gives you some ideas on some of the different effects that you can get with the transfer artist paper. Now the next thing I want to do is play a little bit with some metallic foils. Now, as I said at the beginning of today, metallic foils have come from the packaging industry, and they were designed so that they make things very desirable for us to buy. You know, you'd want to walk past and make sure that you grab the shiniest of the toothbrush boxes, because obviously the shininess has a great impact on its functionality. But anyway, these are a couple of colours that I would not be using on my current project, but for the purposes of demonstrating, I'm just going to show you. So metallic foils come in a sheet, and it's basically cellophane with colour sprayed on it. Now, the pretty side is up. You always work with the pretty side up. The plain silver side goes down onto the surface. Now, one of the things that I always liked about using foils with stamping, you could use all sorts of different double-sided tapes. A lot of people use, there's glues now that you can get that you can write on. But I wanted to work with foils on fabric, and I wanted, therefore, my fabric, I wanted to be permanent on my fabric. So I spent a bit of time thinking about where will I find a glue, in inverted commas, for fabric. And that brought me to a drawer that had mending things. I don't even know why I owned such things, but anyway, I did. So I started pulling out originally the hemming tape. I don't know if you're familiar, it's about 1 centimetre wide, and you can buy it in the supermarkets, and you can use it for putting up your hems if you suddenly stuck and can't do so with a needle and a thread. And that then of course led me on to Vlisafix, and Vlisafix is a great thing to foil. And this example that I've had at the background today, I wanted it to look aged and antiqued, so I removed the foil while it was still hot, which meant I got this broken up effect, and areas where there's no foil, and that'll make more sense in a minute. But these big squares in the background were just foils on Vlisafix. You can see here that where it is all adhered, there's actually quite solid amounts, and when you're using something like Vlisafix, or any of those other similar applique based double-sided webs, they're very compact, and you get quite intense blocks of foil because they're so solid. I'm going to show you a couple of examples. So first things first, again out of the papercraft world, there's a range of different embossing powders. Now these are basically little particles of glue. Wherever I sprinkle a little bit of the bonding powder, I'm going to transfer foils. Pretty side up. Always put baking paper or an applique mat down with your foils, because otherwise you'll make a big mess of your iron. And you want to iron it long enough so that it's melting the glue. So once your foil's completely cool, you can peel it away and you'll see that where the bonding powder was, I get the foil, which can be really quite stunning and effective. Now, a couple of other things that you can use. I talked about Vlasifix, and I'm going to show you Misty Fuse. Now, Misty Fuse is a double-sided web. It doesn't come with paper, so it's designed to be used in different ways than your traditional applique. But one of the things I love about it is it's got this beautiful open texture. And more importantly, I can tease it open, I can rip it up a bit, and each strand is effectively a line of very super thin, super cool glue. So if I pull that out and spread it right out, and this time I'll go with the lilac or violet, give it an iron long enough to melt the glue. So, yep, it's stuck. So we're going to wait long enough now for it to cool down, very impatiently. And then once it's cooled, if I peel my foils away, I get again this magnificent open foil. Now I don't necessarily need to do it quite as solidly as that. Often I'd spend a bit more time and peel it all open a lot more so that you get much more cobweb-like finish. But yeah, you can see that's coming. Now the thing that I like the most, which I've played with, is fusible thread. Now Wonderful has a beautiful fusible thread. There's a couple of other brands out there, but let's just have a play with that. Now fusible thread's designed largely so that you can do your hemming and whatever, put it in your machine, sew it up, iron it on, and it'll hold in place. But if we take this and just treat it as a really interesting piece of glue, then I can create all sorts of different designs. So let's find some, pop that one there, and pop the purple one there, and give it an iron. Same deal, pretty side up, iron just long enough to melt your glue, let it cool down. Now imagine if you were to take this fusible thread and put it into your sewing machine and did some decorative stitching, or if you've got one that does words and names, you could write people's names, or whatever you choose to do. Even a basic zigzag all over a piece, or some quilting in with a fusible thread. and then once you have finished, take it off and foil it. There's a whole world of things that you can do. So I'm hoping that there's some things that you found interesting today. I'm going to go and finish up the work on the actual quilt top in a little while, so that I've got something to show you tomorrow, and then we'll move on to creating some of the applique with silks and velvets and sheers and some other textures, and I'll explain to you why I do what I do with those. Again, if you haven't joined Facebook or Instagram and would like to keep an eye on what I'm doing, see new projects, new classes, etc., please do. All the details are on the screen, and we shall have a little bit of a chat again tomorrow.